Hey guys, welcome to episode 1 of the Kurious Kast. My name is Charles Coetzee. I'm your host and also the co-owner of the Kurious Group. Today with us on our first episode, we have Andrew Stenos, who's a very good friend of mine, but also one of Australia's top luxury home builders. And today we're going to be talking about branding, the importance of marketing, and how it's helped him pivot his business from a very different part of the building industry to where he is now. So without further ado, Andrew, how you going?
Charles, good to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, bro.
So today, I'd like to let the audience know a little bit about yourself and your business and how you've been able to pivot your business from doing bathroom renovations to luxury high-end builds.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for a lot of builders in that industry, that is probably the dream. They would want to go from doing a very specialized type of building to going to that high-end luxury market, but no one's really able to achieve it.
Sure.
So, you and your business partner, Aaron, have managed to do it successfully in a very short amount of time.
Yep.
And, no matter which job site of yours you go to, branding is always very on point.
Very much.
Everything is always looking, the way that it should for that tier of builder, not just the build itself, but all the branding that goes along with it.
Totally.
So if you don't mind, let's tell the audience a little bit about yourself and let them find out who you are and a bit about your business, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. So I guess we started 9 years ago. Charles, as you know a lot about us, so we've been long-term friends, and it's kind of weird to be sitting next to each other talking about what I do. But objectively, yeah, we started off I started as a builder. I studied university. I did construction management. And then about roughly 9 years ago, we started a bathroom building business, which we have been lucky enough to scale up to build as a luxury builder. And like you said, Charles, we specialize in luxury builds and developments. So yeah, that's sort of where we started, and that trajectory has probably taken us about 9 years.
Yeah, well, even in business, 9 years isn't a very long amount of time.
No. And
to go from Integriti Bathrooms to Integriti Projects and been able to do the caliber of stuff that you do is quite impressive. So fill me in, what was the thought process behind that as far as where you were and how did you put that plan together to get where you are now?
Yeah, so I think what you were saying in terms of the pivotal brand, and as I think from the start of where we had our business, we initially placed more focus on marketing than we did the skill set. Both myself and Aaron aren't physical builders ourselves. We're not tradies. We're not people that physically do the work behind it. So we're heavily reliant on winning work, being able to manage it via project management process. And ultimately, that meant we were less experienced when it came to the physicality of the work. So we were more reliant on branding, a website. A lot of our initial work, pretty much all our initial work, came from small referrals, working through, but primarily online marketing. And we were able to attain work more around the fact that we had a very good website, a really good value offering at the time. And then as we've scaled from, we were a micro business to a slightly bigger business to where we are today, branding has always been the pivotal one for us. And with that, we've taken an approach of evolving. That thought process. So we started initially as a very family orientated thing, which was, the colors were blue and orange. We were a bathroom business, as you'd mentioned. Were very approachable in the fact that we were the owner operator of that business. Then, a couple of years later, as it developed into a renovation business, we rebranded. We lost the name Bathrooms and became Integriti Projects. And then in the last probably 3 years, we evolved again when we became a really, which was our goal, to be a luxury builder. We rebranded 2 times after that. Now, it's kind of sounds ridiculous. We've done so many rebrands, and now we're kind of, I was pretty happy with the brand. We did a new, overall look and feel of it, new website to suit the type of customer we have.
Yeah, I think that's really important. A lot of businesses, especially small businesses, no matter really what industry you're in, don't understand, whether it's just because they're so involved in the day-to-day of the business or it's something that's just overlooked. They don't understand the importance of how their brand makes their clientele feel. So when they look at their branding, they look at their colors, their fonts, the language that is used online in their websites, all of those things, they don't always put two and two together. They think this is what my business should sound like, but it may not necessarily resonate with who it needs to speak to. So, it's really great to hear that in your case, you and Aaron both have had that ability to take a step back and say, okay, what does our business need to look like? What does it need to feel like to attract that type of clientele?
And it went granular, to be honest. I think we went down to the point of and this is sort of going into the mechanics of it, we looked at how even the user experience was. It's what's the brands that we associate our business to by association? So for an example of this, transitions in the photos of the website, they move with it. And then we had a lot of our customers are essentially females. And with those female customers, you also have a male influence, which may be the husband and usually in these particular instances, we've created a model of the type of people and the type of consumers that we have. And then we've catered our business and branding to be consistent with, a male and female. So if you look on our website, there's a black, there's a white, the white being more for the female, black being for the male. And the particular houses that we've designed have been also considerable to that. So example being, years ago, I remember we did a bachelor pad and it was very how would you put us? Masculine. Yeah. So it's very dark toned, beautiful gold furnitures, etc. The theme and design, that categorizes under our own projects as a more male project. So even on our own brand guidelines, we have particular fonts and wording that are suited to each one.
So Andrew, from what you've told us so far, you've really understood the importance of your brand avatars and why they are so important in your business. So if you don't mind, if you break that down as to when did you realize that it was so important to understand exactly who your clientele is to such detail?
Well, I think it started originally at the start, but it's actually evolved. And it's funny, we've had multiple avatars in our business along the life cycle. And I think we've had multiple brands across time because it had a suitable avatar at the time. So for example, like we said before at the start, we started as a bathroom business. We were a very affordable business. We were very attainable price point, and we were very family oriented. As we've developed, we've become very much lesser avatars and more specific natured. So in the sense that the way in which we've branded our business has adjusted to be consistent with the avatar. So an example of this is at the moment, we're a luxury builder and developing business. So our particular clientele is very finite. So we're looking at a specific person who has a specific look and is shopping for a specific value. So an example of this would be in our own avatar, we've outlined, what type of consumer are they? What are they driving? What do they wear? What are they shopping with? And on top of that, that's then cast us a particular brand that we want for that. So, what type of cars do they drive? What type of, income are they making? Has been a driving factor towards a type of brand. So if you were to look at our brand now, I would say it's a reflection of something that's a bit more bespoke and something that's a bit more individual. So the types of homes that we are building are of that sort of standard.
And getting into those avatars, how has that helped in your business? What I mean by that is when you're building and designing these homes and these developments, obviously those avatars have got particular needs.
Correct.
So how has that helped in actually understanding what they want in the build?
Yeah, for sure. So I remember there was a period where we were a bit of no man's land. And I remember looking at it and we're like, what actually fucking do we do? And I remember going through that, and that was a light bulb moment for us because, on one section we were still doing some renovation work, and then on other sections we were building very well homes. So we had to review what our avatar was and the section down and go, what is our ideal client? What is the ideal thing that we want to attain? And when we became really specific about that, it made it a lot simpler to work with. Okay, we only work with these particular designers. We only have these levels of inclusions, we have this price point, we have this entry point. And it gave us a bit of a framework to go, okay, well, this is the ideal client, this is the ideal type of build. And then from there, that translated to these are the type of ad spends we're going to put on. So, if someone at this point in time was to offer us a smaller build or something that's project-based, we wouldn't be able to help. So therefore, our funnel has changed dramatically across time. So from like an ad spend or from a SEO perspective, our keywords, the type of people that we're trying to attract are as close as we can to what our ideal clientele is. And like, as you'd appreciate, like the marketing spend is sort of deleting off what's not needed and only focused on the ones that we do.
Yeah, well, a big part of it also is when you're putting this kind of spend and time and effort into your marketing, you want to be able to ensure that your spend is an investment and you are getting a return on that investment. It's not an expense.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And we see this in a lot of businesses, not necessarily just in building, but when clients or business owners decide to, hey, let's do some marketing, but they really don't understand who their audience is. They're kind of just throwing money everywhere and seeing where it sticks.
Totally. And we've all been guilty of it. Like we've done it many times. Like
I've done it myself. Like it's something that everybody goes through, and it's like when you sit there pulling your hair out, like, fuck, why am I not making, why am I not making any return on my marketing?
Totally.
But it's just not understanding who your market is.
Yeah, and I think it was really hard, I think, from a business perspective to go, well, we need to burn the boats in this particular situation. We don't take on that because as like we're only a small business, and ultimately we still feel like, each one of our clientele matter, but so it's very hard to say no. But it was learning to say no, so that when the right opportunity did provide, we can provide a good service, we can provide an opportunity, and we're the right fit.
Yeah, well, I think it's also just coming back to ethically running a business in the sense of every client you take on, you want to be able to service them to the best of your ability to get them to the desired result that they deserve.
Totally.
Yeah, at the end of the day, people are handing over their hard-earned money. You need to make sure that you're the right person to provide the service that they need. Speaking about the seriousness of like all the branding and the marketing and what you did to get where you did.
Yep.
So tell me some things that you saw when you were putting together your marketing and you were like, fuck, I never want to be that bloke in front of the camera.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Building is like real estate. Everyone does the same shit.
The same cheesy.
Yeah, the same cheesy shit. So I think for us, like, and it's really hard because at certain times I don't feel like I'm a builder because I'm not a tradie. Like, fuck, man, I can't do anything. But we understand the importance of like branding. So we really hated the stereotypical guy who shot a couple of photos on his iPhone, with the tools and the dust and everything looked fucked. And we took a different approach of like, which so behind the scenes, so it's a bit more cinematographic like. But we also, like, with our brand, and this is specifically in the later years, we've taken an approach of like a lot of our like brand is like cross-related between fashion, and a lot of that cross-relation to fashion is like the way in which we shoot our houses. Like for an example, like we won't shoot anything on a fucking iPhone. Like it just doesn't happen in our industry. So like a lot of our stuff, we shoot drone footages, but we shoot it like a fashion shoot. So we have stylists come in, we have people that are actually making it look consistent with the brand. And that's something that we would like never compromise on because we didn't want to be like standing at the camera, hi, I'm Andrew and welcome to this fucking house. Like, it's just not me.
Yeah, but like you've been in the industry a long time. I guarantee
I probably did that as well.
But I guarantee there's probably a lot of fucking videos you watch where it's like, I know that's a fraud. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I know you don't know how to hold a hammer. Like,
yeah, the me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, you're not sugarcoating it. Like, hey, yeah, I was fucking building shit with my own two hands for 20 years. Like,
totally.
It's like, hey, no, like, I know what good stuff looks like. I've got an eye for detail and business, and like, this is what we do. Like,
and that was a big barrier for us because like we were reasonably young, and like I'm like, youngish looking, like not now, but when we first started, it was an entry barrier. It's like, okay, you're in your early 20s, you're pitching a particular price point, and you're the youngest guy in the room. So that inhibition from the sales cycle was, okay, well, what's the reasoning for? So we decided, and the approach, may or may not have worked, but like was to be, okay, we're more refined in many aspects. We're not, rocking up with we're not doing it all ourselves. We're getting designers in there. We work with the best designers. We associate ourselves with great project management teams. We have a bit more of a process, which gave us a point of difference despite like being younger. And that was really fucking hard to work out. Like, what is a unique value proposition that we can offer to our particular sector?
Yeah, well, I guess when you're not the most experienced in the sense of like you haven't been in the industry for like 40 years, and you're not the old guy walking in the room with that, with that trophy on your shoulder or in your hand.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what do I bring to the table? And it's like, well, at the end of the day, you're not going to bullshit and say, oh, like I'm this or I'm that. It's like, hey, this is what we are. This is what we do. Let's not fucking sugarcoat what it is.
Sure. And look, the funny thing was we ended up working with particular clientele that were of the same cuff as us. So what I mean by that, like, is that if we were to rock up to a house and someone was 7 years old and they're looking for a guy that's worked in the industry for 7 years, we're not the right fit. We were designing houses that were like usually probably a bit nicer and a bit more bespoke.
So you said to me, you had those challenges of, walking into the room, not being the most experienced in the sense of not being in the industry for 40 years and having to bring a different proposition to the table. Talk to us about like what challenges you did face, or you and Aaron both faced, because you're both young. You've both done this in quite a short amount of time compared to other people in your industry or in any industry really, like to turn something around that quick. So like elaborate on those challenges a bit more.
Okay. Yeah, cool. I mean, in all business, man, there's so many challenges, man. Like, I think probably some of the hardest ones that we had, and, were probably cash flow. That was initially, as a builder, like you get paid a very large sum of money a very small money amount commencement, large sums across long periods of time. And that made it really hard as a management side. I think for us, like initially when we first started, probably the age barrier was a really big one. So that was something that we came across a lot, and our experience ability. So part of that made that really hard was that, in the area that we were working in at the time, people were expecting to pay a certain amount of money for certain things, but receive a certain amount of value. So where we looked at it differently, we had certain loss leaders.
So like a lot of this stuff I know because I know you personally.
Sure.
Right? And the whole point of this is to ensure that our audience gets to know a little bit more about yourself, but also maybe if they're not in the building industry, but do something else. A lot of these challenges, whether it be branding, whether it be marketing, or just general business stuff, like people come across these challenges every day in their business, and it's not easy. It's fucking hard.
Sure.
So like you said before about cash flow, like when that's a really big obstacle for like 100% of small businesses. Like anyone that tells you they don't have cash flow issues in their small business, by small business, I mean anyone employing under like 50 people, they're probably lying to you. So
totally, man. Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is like, how did you overcome those challenges? And like, how much stress did that really put on you to get things going?
Yeah, for sure. So I remember one of the pivotal ones I recall, which was a really big challenge, was prior to having a really great understanding of cash flow, we really based a lot of our business around the feel of what we thought the amount of money we had and coming in, the amount of money coming out. Now, I remember at a time a friend of mine mentioned, and he's like, you should really look at getting yourself a CFO and understanding which are numbers, because the numbers provide you an understanding and a bit of a forecast, right? So, and at that particular time in business, we were very early. We hadn't had a CFO. We hadn't had cash flow forecasts. We hadn't looked at work in progresses. We hadn't looked at how we would, foreseeably deliver things, and we're like, yep to everything. So where that made a huge shift in our business was we actually realized we were making no money. We realized at the end of a certain period of time, there wasn't any margin. And in order to overcome that and to actually understand it well, was to actually go deep into the problem. So the first thing we did was we appointed a CFO. First 2 people we had were fucking useless. And
I think that's also part of the thing that kind of throws people off. It's like no one knows my business better than me. No one's gonna be able to do what I do better than me, and they think that they can wear every hat in the business.
Yeah. I mean, look,
but also they get disheartened when it's like, oh, I hired someone and they were fucking shit. But like you said, it took 2 to get to the 3rd to find someone who actually knew what they were talking about.
Yeah, totally. And that's adjusted across time. Like I remember we had dreadful accountants at previous periods. But what we found was in this particular instance, we had an accountant that had totally stuffed off all our tax. Then we had a second accountant come in and tell us that it was totally fucked. And then they fucked it more. And then the third person that came in, we had all this apprehension around what they could do and what they could engage with us. And originally what we started off with was just a basic like understanding of expenses, fixed expenses, adjusting, and what outgoings we actually had. And that was a really amazing relationship. He's a close friend now. We no longer work together, but we've worked together for 7 years until we sort of had our own metrics of doing it ourselves. But what that provided for us, and how do you describe it? It really matured me and myself and Aaron. Like we became a bit more understanding that you can't just be gung-ho.
No.
You can't be just really dumb and stupid with money. And I recall at this particular time, we were looking at our gross margin and we're like, is that fucking it? That's all we have. But because of the amount of expenses that were going out and the amount of lack of thought that was put around it. So from there, we created metrics and we created mechanisms that were specific to our business, that worked specifically for our model. And the funny thing, like similar to like we were talking about branding across time, as we grew or as we adjusted markets, the model changed. Just like the branding changed, the forecast changed. And there's always a period of, and I recall this when we would be shifting a market where there'd be accrued, like lots of time. So like you might get new staff in, they might not be productive for 3 or 4 months. That production means that like they're not doing active work for a period of time. But on top of that, you're also having a continued outgoing expense for that person being not productive.
But then also you've got a productive person who is now less productive because they've got to train them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that was always really a hard challenge. I recall, with particular areas that we had, and I recall when we had a design portion to our business, we were not experienced in this particular area. We had hired a design team that we thought was going to be profitable because we were doing it in-house. And what we learned was it was kind of twofold. Like we were better to associate ourselves with guys that had really great designs, had a good following and a similar customer to ours. And on top of that, we realized that we didn't know what we were fucking doing how to run a design business, and that we'd sort of bitten off more than we could chew by thinking that we can manage a design business, yet we're builders. So through that process, it was interesting that the CFO, the design team, the construction team all had an involvement on adjusting and saying, can we actually do this? And humbling ourselves to be like, we can't run a design business. We don't really know what we're doing here. So that sector of the business had to die off. And like, I think from my learning across like the 9 years, like you can never forsake the importance of cash flow and understanding it. And now it feels like second nature, but I still think back to me at like, early 20s, having no idea. And that almost light bulb moment when the CFO and the right person came together and it all kind of made sense.
Yeah, I also think it alleviates that sense of anxiety that kind of comes with it. It's like when you do look at it and it's like, oh, I'm fucking making all this money. And then you go to look at the gross bottom line
the other way.
And then it's like, I'm not actually making any money or I'm not making as much as I thought.
Correct.
And then it causes like this anxiety because you don't understand the mechanics of how it works and what the outgoings are, what's coming in, what's going out. And then it's like, well, when you sit down and actually look at the raw numbers, then it's like, oh, well, I've got this amount of expenses. I've got this amount of, of money coming in. It's like, okay, well, I can now forecast a bit better. I know exactly how much I can actually spend. And it also gives you an understanding of like, okay, well, maybe we need to charge more or maybe we need more work or, maybe we don't need a design firm because it's fucking like not for us.
Totally. And I think that like understanding particular sector was like understanding our gross margin. How many people do we need to do this particular job? What's the amount of employees we need? What's the margin we need for our business to survive? And having that, and like I know from my own experience, we had no clue at one period of point. And now it's like it's the pillar of our business because without profit, there is no longevity without it.
So you said you'd worked with other mediums of marketing and all different types of mediums of marketing as your branding evolved and as your business evolved. What didn't work and what did work?
So it's kind of interesting. So you have these initial ideas of where you and how you think would work and what would become there and what would get certain eyes, which may result in translation of business. So an example of this, we've been on many magazines, like large spreads, front covers, had projects featured, many articles written on them, thick with huge readership, thinking this is going to translate into it. Now, most of these have been like natural born, like where they've come to us and say, we want to do an expose on this particular project. We'd love to show it, explain who the builder and designer was, and it's going to get this many readers. And we thought, wow, we're going to hit gold, we're going to win jobs, we're going to have these particular things. And honestly, it didn't translate to a lot for our particular sector. The PR thought we've done heaps of PR, really good articles on ourselves, and it never really translated. Another thing that we did across time, I remember we actually had a stand set up at a shopping centre with particular branding, providing information.
And you see those all the time.
100%. And we've had a huge amount of money for a particular stand to sit there thinking that, okay, we're going to get qualified customers. People who don't work, people who have time during the day to come down and sit and talk to us. And I recall like our team and ourselves were there and the entire week, I think no one spoke to us. Like it was wild. Like we literally had thought those things were going to translate into work. And what we ended up working out was what worked for us specifically, I think, was relationships. That was really important. So those particular designers who have had a long-standing relationship, that provided us work. And mainly, most of our work came from Google Ads. A lot of spend on particular clientele and really refining the brand for us worked. Whereas on the outset, we thought PR, we thought magazines, we thought media outlets, we've been on television. None of that translated for us to dollars and cents in customers.
Yeah, well, your clientele your specific clientele or anyone's specific clientele isn't everywhere. It's generally concentrated in one place.
Correct.
So, someone's clientele might be on Facebook. Some clients' clientele might be on Instagram, Google, in a magazine, YouTube. But it's understanding who that is really well and being able to execute it. But it's not always right either. It's all trial and testing, like you said.
Correct.
You put all this time and effort and money into this marketing, and it's like, oh, fuck, that didn't equivalent to anything.
Oh my God, we've done it so many times where we've looked and we're like, that just simply didn't work.
Yeah, and it's anything you could really forecast. It's like you do the research, you do all of the, you do all the legwork, and you're like, oh, I should get X amount of leads out of this or X amount of new clients, and then you get zero.
Correct.
So you got to go back to the drawing board.
Totally.
But it's about not being disheartened.
Yeah, totally. And kind of just having a really good understanding of what has worked and what hasn't, and not repeating what hasn't worked.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, I really thank you for your time today of going into the intricacies of your business and giving the audience a bit of an understanding of, what hasn't worked in marketing, in business for you and those relationships. What is something you would want to say to your younger self, not necessarily in building, but just in business in general or marketing?
Yeah, I think for us, take it slow. I think something that we were always in a rush to was like we wanted to be at the next step and we wanted to be the fastest this and the fastest that and fastest this. And it was almost at the expense of your own mental state. I think if I were to go back and look at my younger self, we were in such a rush to grow a business that we'd put all our time and all our effort into that one particular sector and didn't really put a lot of time outside that. And that loss awareness meant that, opposed to focusing on profit and growth and stable growth, we were focused mainly on just growing as fast as we can, regardless of. And if I was to go back to myself, younger self, I'd probably say make the profit and don't be in too much of a rush, because the time gets past and you get there. And for myself, I feel like as I've become older, as I've become a dad, I've become a lot more mature and a bit more understanding, and just to enjoy the process and to really enjoy what you're doing, opposed to being in the next end syndrome. Like, when I'm there, I'll be feeling better.
Yeah, because you don't always get that same gratification when you get to where you think you want to be. You're always just looking at what's next.
Nah, and totally, the destination is so underwhelming.
Yeah, it really is the journey.
Yeah, totally, yeah. And it sounds
it sounds
very catch, but it really is. It really is, because when you do get there, you might have it tied to a certain amount of money. It's super underwhelming. You might get there and you might think, okay, if I'm this size business, or we have this many followers, or we have this size, yada, 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 it's always been a bit more of a letdown. Whereas I've found, when I've looked back, the working me and Aaron late listening to music and jamming out, I value that more than, okay, we made one X amount of projects, or et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, definitely. And it's that relationship. You two have been friends a very long time, even probably before business.
Totally.
And it's that friendship that's kind of grown with it, which is great to see. I know Aaron as well, and it's he's a great guy.
Yep.
And he's grown with you as a friend and also as a business partner, which is really amazing to see, because it doesn't always happen.
No, and I think if I was to go back to myself, it would be go slower to go faster.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time today, Andrew, and being able to tell everyone a bit more about yourself and give everyone a bit of advice as to, what kind of has and hasn't worked. Because when it does come down to it, these stories do help a lot of people. And that's the whole point of this. We want to be able to help as many small business owners as possible to hear those stories, to be able to take them away and implement them into their own business. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles.